In public companies, there are scenarios historically, not so much I think anymore, but in the past where CEOs kind of handpick their boards. And then today it feels like the norm is more you have a nominating committee and they run a process and they present a slate. That's usually based on their board matrix. And then the committee interviews and then the board interviews and the CEO interviews and all of that. So how does private equity or private credit typically identify and select their potential directors? And generally, what is going to be most important to the firm, knowing that there are, several thousand firms, so obviously generalizing here, but how does that differ from what we're used to in a public company with a board matrix and the normal slate? Is it the same? Is it different? Oh, either one of you, whoever wants to go first here.
Emily, do you want to go or I can go?
Maybe you can start, Robert, because
Okay.
I mine's pretty plain.
Yeah. So it depends again on what the investment structure looks like. If it was a deal that was done completely by one private equity firm, then you're going to have a cadre of individuals supported by the dominant investor. Some of them may be operating partners that are on the staff of the private equity firm. These are former CEOs and former CFOs that bring deep expertise and are running a general playbook that this private equity firm or private credit firm often runs. You will find industry experts, people that are just super plugged into what's going on in the industry that can very much assist with strategy and with, business development. As Emily said before, there are some companies that, some private equity firms that don't like CFOs in portfolio companies. They centralize all of that. They may have a controller. They likely will have a controller, but they centralize the functions of the CFO at their level. And then lastly, there can be other individuals that are helpful to the private equity firm or have been helpful to the private equity firm that are good qualified directors that can sit on the portfolio company. And then, as you get smaller, you may have former founders that have negotiated to stay on the board. They've now become a director and they're going to look over the shoulder of the CFO. Caution, enter at your own risk on that one because revisionism and the way I would have done itism is can be alive and well. But I would say that the number one goal is still very consistent with the public markets. It's getting talented people on the board that can help with the development, the maturation, and ultimately the exit of that company. But many private companies are not as formal with
Yeah.
skills matrix with coaches for directors and frankly may or may not be using Robert's rules of order to drive
Hmm.
structured motions and some of the things that you talk about. It's a culture, it's dependent upon the culture of the portfolio company and more so the culture of the lead
The
investor.
firm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Emily, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the only thing is that several of the private capital boards that I'm on, they did utilize a recruiter to either have me join or someone else. But for the most part, Robert nailed it in regards to they already private funds already have a list of qualified individuals that they can put on boards.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have seen that they vary, right? I mean, all of this is every firm is different. So some are going to use Robert's rules of orders, and then some are building it as they're going, or every portco is slightly different. So
Yeah,
that
I,
makes
I
sense.
I will share one additional trend though, Michelle. Looking at the stage that the company is in, a very early stage, you could see a lot of people around that table that you don't recognize, clearly what their role is. As a company gets closer and closer to IPO, you
Hmm.
start to see the company board formalize in a way that looks very much like a public company because, they're dressing the company, prepping the company and
Yeah.
getting it ready.
Getting it ready.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I agree. So, how does the So given that slightly different environment, how does the independent director specifically sitting on a private company balance that necessary support for the CEO, but also the focus on the returns for the firm? I mean, it can be a tricky balance. Thoughts around that?
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, it probably will never fully go away in regards to that balance. I mean, it's important to see whether or not the CEO and his or her success in being able to lead the company go into the company and not just be a cheerleader or a strategist, but actually going down into the operations and making sure that the results are what are expected by the private capital firm, right? Either it's compliance with um, you know um, credit requirements that they have, or it's metrics that the private capital firm wants to see in regards to rule of 40 or something that they're measuring the company by. When a CEO starts to have problems with being able to, one, articulate the strategy of the company to get to the financial results that are expected, and they start becoming really defensive and not being able to be uh, I guess judicious in regards to looking out from the outside in, that's when we have issues. And obviously the board has a tricky situation if the CEO has controlling interest. Uh, so it is tricky. You try to help them understand. Well, this is what you took this money for, either the private capital or the private equity or the credit. So there's a delicate balance. A lot of it has to do with when you join the board or when someone joins the board, building a rapport with the other board members and the CEO to have that mutual respect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes up all the time, right? This is the perennial question,
Yep.
and I'll analogize it to helping your kid learn to ride a bike, watching your child swim for the first time, or if you have a teenager, watching them drive a car for the first time. If they do it really well and you're confident, it's easy to keep your hands out, to sort of stand back, cheer them on, grab their towel when they need it, or, take them to McDonald's or whatever that looks like. Where it gets tricky is when it doesn't work, right? Because when it doesn't work, you have heightened emotions. And the emotions are typically heightened around who has the most to lose. You will see some of the investors take very strong positions about early fast terminations. They'll wax poetic from, the Bible and literature and everything else. It all comes into the table, where some people want to give a lot of time and others want to, cut it quickly and move on. And so all of those things play out, and those emotions have to be balanced. And I think the thing you have to figure out in those moments is, where are we going to go, right? Are we going to change the leader, which may in fact require a change in the company's strategy, which may require taking on new capital? There are all sorts of extrapolated decisions that one decision makes. And before you change out the CEO, you better think through what all of the other implications
Or,
are.
yeah.
And we all know it. You can fully tank a company by getting rid of the CEO that has a lot of equity, because now you're going to have lawsuits and you're going to be paying out capital that you should be using to expand and grow the business. What I find in situations like that is it's very comforting when you have highly experienced directors that can either validate that this is just a rough patch, or that can sound the alarm because this is, a critical issue. And newer directors in those moments, to me, really ought to observe the room and get an understanding of where people's expertise comes from, as opposed to believing just because everybody has a chair that everybody's voice is necessarily equal in that moment.